introductory for the sake of the participants. So my background, I'm an engineer from IIT and a Harvard Business School alumni, and spent the last 41 years working mostly in the textile industry, but had a 4 or 5 year stint in food and grocery retail, which included all categories. So my background is primarily textiles, but have managed businesses as a business leader for Mr. Birla, different businesses over the last 24 years. Let's say, the background that I have is really going through various sectors and aspects of the textile industry. I worked for polyester, I worked for nylon, I worked for viscose for Grasim, I worked for acrylic, cotton, wool, linen, and polyester yarns for ABG in my last 12-year stint. So, and of course, a 5-year stint as the managing director of Aditya Birla Retail, which at that point in time was one of India's largest supermarket and hypermarket operators. So, in addition to this, I've been very privileged that I've spent 4 years as the chairman of CII's National Council of Retail, 3 years as chairman of CII's National Committee on Branding and Marketing, 1 year as the chairman of the CII National Committee on Textiles, and have been on the Services Council and the Sustainability Council of CII for more than a decade. I was part of the National Council for more than a decade and have had a wonderful experience working with CII at the National Council level. In addition, my last 2 years, I chaired the ASSOCHEM's newly formed Committee on Marketing and Branding. And of course, I was very privileged to work as a special member in the Coca-Cola Council. It's called the Retail Research Council for Eurasia for more than 4 years. So this is really my background: retail, textiles, manufacturing, marketing, branding, and of course, operations and sustainability. A lot of emphasis on manufacturing, of course, with a lot of retail experience thrown in. So this is really the background to me, just for the sake of all the people attending the call. In so far as the industry is concerned, I think India is a very privileged country when it comes to textiles. And why do I say that? I say that because it is one of those countries blessed with abundant raw material. There are many countries which are leading in this sector without any raw material, but India is one of the largest cotton producers in the world, has abundant availability of viscose and polyester, both fiber and filament, has producers of wool, though nothing in comparison to Australia. We are one of the largest consumers of linen and wool, even though linen is not produced in this country, but we are the second largest importers of linen after China. So, and we, of course, also have a very strong silk industry, apart from being the largest producers of jute in the world. So India logically should have had a wonderful innings as far as the textile and apparel opportunities globally is concerned. However, we have really not made the kind of headways that countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam are beginning to make in this sector, as opposed to China, which has led this sector for almost 2-3 decades now. And what is really there going for India? So apart from raw material, India has very low manufacturing cost in terms of labor. I used to manage an 8-country operation, so I'm very familiar with the cost in many parts of Asia and Europe. And I can say with certainty that India has definitely one of the lowest labor costs with the exception of Africa, where, of course, skill level is very low and the labor cost, while it's low, is not very efficient. So India has a tremendous advantage on labor cost. Then we come to the other major element which comprises the cost, which is power. India's power costs, while it has gone up in the last several years, is still very competitive and definitely very competitive now even to China. And the only countries which have much lower power cost again is Africa, Indonesia, and some places where there's hydroelectric power, and of course Vietnam, where the power cost is, I would say, only slightly lower, so it's not that great an advantage. So India has a good advantage. India has a very strong domestic market. India has very strong domestic retailers and apparel makers, and therefore should have been logically one of the countries which should have benefited from the China Plus One policy. However, I think what India really lacks in the apparel space, which has led to it not being able to seize this opportunity post-COVID, is the fact that we don't have scale of economies. Not even the largest apparel makers have scale compared to what the Chinese have. And I think the advantage in the last 3 years post-COVID has really gone mostly to Bangladesh. Sri Lanka has also benefited, and of course, Vietnam has benefited. So these are the three countries who have actually benefited from the China Plus policy. India, apart from all the advantages that I said, also has tremendous strength in terms of good machinery makers, which is a very rare thing that apart from China and Europe, there are very few countries in the world where there are embedded large-scale manufacturers of spinning equipments, weaving equipments, processing and dyeing equipments. So I think India has a tremendous advantage, not really leveraged because of scale. And secondly, the Indian policy makers have never really treated the Indian textile industry as an organized, integrated industry. And I think it is one lobby or the other which has always been in the forefront. Sometimes it's the cotton lobby, sometimes the man-made fiber lobby, sometimes it is the spinners lobby, sometimes it's the fiber lobby. So we haven't really seen a very unified, integrated policy approach for the government. And at least I've seen for the last 15, 20 years, all the government announcements in terms of, dedicated zones for textiles, to have export-oriented zones, to have apparel zones, have not really come to any great amount of success. The only place where India has really made a significant dent is in the knitted market, and that too because of Tirupur. And Tirupur, as you all know, evolved over time into becoming a large knitting hub for the world and a very large knitting hub for Indian exporters. So I think, to cut a long story short, I think a lack of an integrated policy approach from the government, a more realistic policy approach, which really helped create these zones, integrated zones for textile industry as a whole, should have helped India, but has not helped India because none of these zones have really taken off. So to summarize, I would say India is one of the few countries in the world where the textile industry can have a great future. It can replace China as a major supplier in the global market. And I think it is only up to the private industry, both small scale, medium scale, and large scale, to get their act together to benefit from the great opportunity that lies ahead of us. So thank you. That's really part of my introduction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, sir. This is Abhishek Nigam. I cover textile sector for BNK Securities. So I now open the floor to questions. Anybody who wants to ask a question, please just raise your hands and unmute your line and go ahead and ask a question. Yeah, Dushyant, can you please identify yourself? Which firm are you from? And then you can please ask a question.
Yeah, everyone who's asking a question, I would like to know from where they are, which particular company they represent, and what is their sectoral interest.
Absolutely. My name is Dushyant. I work at Sage One Investments. We're a PMS and AIF. I do not have any sectoral expertise, as in, we're pretty sector agnostic here. My question mostly is around the fact that despite this ecosystem of raw material availability, especially in cotton, right, which has led to the rise of Bitterport the way it is, from a lot of these global sourcing companies, we hear that India's exposure in the man-made fiber segment is minuscule. What has been the reason for that? It sounds like you're saying that we have enough of that available to at least capitalize on it.
So thank you, Dushyant. It's a very good question, and I think I did allude to the fact that cotton lobby has been extremely strong in India, and despite the fact that cotton was the original fiber of choice, we did not keep pace in this country with changing global trends of consumers and retailers in terms of man-made fiber. And I think we missed the bus somewhere in the 90s and 2000, early 2000s, when despite availability of polyester and viscose and nylon and acrylic, we did not really leverage the availability of raw material in terms of exports of man-made fiber-based apparel or made-up goods globally. Now, why was this? I think it was because for a very long time, the cotton lobby was so strong that they got government to pronounce policies which were in favor of cotton and against, if not against, they were certainly not in favor of man-made fiber. They did not create a level playing field for these two. It's only in the very recent years that the government has realized that and corrected the tariffs, especially the excise tariff and the import tariffs, to bring them on par. Even then, cotton continues to have an advantage. And of course, cotton is important for India because India is the largest cotton growing country in the world now. It has exceeded both China, US, and any other significant cotton producer like Pakistan by a long shot. So India does have a strategic advantage in cotton, but the cotton prices in India, which were extremely low at one point in time, have now come on parity with international prices. So the cotton price advantage, which an Indian producer had, is probably not so much there anymore, but it still has a great advantage in terms of spinning and overall processing cost. So I think India has a great future if the government continues to provide a level playing field because, we have very large polyester producers in the world based in India. We have the largest viscose producer in the world based in India. So we do not have a shortage of raw material to take real advantage of this opportunity of man-made fiber. I hope that answers your question.
That does. Thank you very much. And my second question is this capacity constraint that you talked about. I mean, we have maybe I can count on a single hand the number of producers who can do above 150 million pieces a year. What's stopping these entrepreneurs from taking the plunge into going beyond 200 million, 300 million capacities? I mean, is it labor? Is it sort of a very risk-averse attitude? Or is it just not being able to manage that scale of operations? But what's stopping them from expanding?
I think that's also a very good question, Dushyant. If you were familiar with the industry, you will know that the largest apparel producers in India, who were primarily exporters in the earlier days, actually had multiple plants. It would not be unknown to know that exporters like Hindujas or which is Gokul Das Images in exports or Shahi Exports, they would have multiple plants, 10, 15, 20, 30. So they had no scale economies at that point in time. And these multiple plants were actually based on the Government of India policies regarding this sector. So it really remained more in the small and medium scale rather than large scale organized industry. So that's one of the historical reasons and legacies for why India did not have scale economies and why India did not have people who could take 150 or 200 million pieces order. Now, things have changed. But I don't think the Indian apparel producers, any of them, have really still put up scale plants the way it is in China. and the way it is probably happening now in Vietnam and to a lesser extent in Bangladesh. So I think the good domestic market for apparel has sort of created a sense of complacency, or people are satisfied serving the domestic market rather than looking at export as a major opportunity. So I would reckon that that's probably the reason why we do not have large producers of apparel, and that's the definite reason why India has not got the advantage of China Plus in the last 3 years. I hope that answers your question.
That does, and I don't know if I have time to squeeze in another one, but I could maybe just ask about what would be the trigger for these guys? What would sort of help them realize the large potential they could have? Because, like you said, right, most of this manufacturing that went from China shifted towards Vietnam, and whatever Vietnam has is pretty well known. Might just be Chinese factories not running in Vietnam as well. But what is stopping them from now doing that? I mean, the large domestic presence, but Gokudas, Shahi Exports, all the names you took, all of them are focused solely on exports. Why not go beyond now?
So, Dushyant, again, I think I probably already answered this question. I think the large domestic market gives a sense of complacency. Also, I don't think it is an issue of quality. I don't think it's an issue of innovation, of design. I think Indian export companies have very good capabilities of matching and producing. But over time, India has become, it's not a player of the commodity export markets. It has been playing in a niche. You'll see a large amount of exports of made-ups and garments from India go in very embellished form. That is why you had Surat coming up, where you had, embroidery, embellishment with stones, and so on and so forth. So it became more like a niche market rather than a bulk market or a commodity market. And I don't think there is anything that prevents Indian producers from putting up large-scale plants now. I don't think they're at a fiscal disadvantage. But for some strange reason, maybe it's a lack of orders or the lack of confidence of getting the orders from large retailers around the world. But I don't think there's anything stopping an Indian company from putting up huge-scale plants and exploiting the large export opportunities available in the world. I can tell you one thing. I know from very authoritative sources, very, very authoritative, that China has taken a decision to, let's say, deprioritize textile. And this decision was taken in the Politburo meeting recently, the last meeting of the complete Politburo which took place. And they are going to be only looking at niche business in textiles and not commodity textiles. So again, they are themselves looking at a value-added play, and there is a lot of room for people to enter into large volume size orders. But obviously, the kind of plant, scale of economies, cost of operations have to be such that it also makes money for the manufacturers. So I don't think there's anything stopping them. There is no government impediments now in the way. I think everything is improving. Our ports are improving. Our shipments are improving. Power supply is almost full in every part of the country. Labor is, of course, a concern. Large amounts of labor post-COVID has been a problem for this industry. And of course, you need to train the labor to work in a textile apparel company or a textile spinning or weaving company. So labor could be one constraint, but other than that, I don't see any other constraint. I hope this answers your third question.
That does, and it very conveniently answers my fourth. So thank you very much. That's all I had.
Participants, anyone having any questions?
So while the question queue, people queue up, just something that maybe I can slip in. So just on the man-made fiber theme, I wonder if one of the reasons has been the high-priced, raw material and polyester availability in India. Because I understand only Reliance is the one which is major manufacturer of polyester. and they sell at a price which is not really competitive versus overseas. Is that a factor as well?
So Abhishek, you asked this question, right?
Yes. This is Abhishek.
So Abhishek, two things. One is the pricing policy of Indian man-made fiber producers. They follow a shadow pricing policy. So the shadow pricing is basically looking at international current prevailing prices and looking at the import tariffs and fixing the domestic price. The import tariffs on both polyester, viscose, acrylic, etc. are down to fairly reasonable levels in line with the rest of the world. It's not nil duty, but it is very reasonable. So I think it is a question of basically shadow pricing following the international price market, but the distortions come in when there is anti-dumping duties imposed or, safeguard duty imposed, etc. So I think the concerned industries are always very active, trying to work with the government to make sure that Indian domestic industry has a competitive raw material supply base. So I don't think that is something which is sort of been a constraint. I think Indian policymakers are open to reviewing this. We have reviewed it ourselves many times for import of certain items. So I think that option is available to everyone. So I don't think really the raw material price is the only factor. There could be other factors of productivity of labor, of productivity of machinery, and productivity of capital, which could be a concern for Indian producers. But raw material, if protected by safeguard duties and anti-dumping duties, does distort the reality for the textile value chain in India.
Fair
I
enough.
hope that answers your question, Abhishek.
Yeah, that does. Certainly. Anyone else who wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and introduce yourself. And so just staying on, spinning. So one of the issues that I think some of the companies which I'm covering in the spinning space are facing is the 11% duty. So do you see that going in an election year is that do you think that can be a key constraint which deters people from making investments?
The spinning industry is a fairly well-organized industry. The Indian Spinners Associations are a strong force to reckon with, in addition to having support from organizations like SRT, PC, etc. So I don't think if they're working hard enough to get duties corrected, there should be any problem for them to do it. Because the government is fairly open to looking at realistic injury or realistic concern for any sector of the industry. But like I said in my opening speech, the whole government approach of looking at this as an integrated textile industry, textile and apparel and made-up industry, like China did, is something which really needs to be worked on by the government. Because they really need to look at what is in India's favor, how does India become a value-added producer, and how does India become a significant player in the global textile and apparel market after China, which it can become. It has all the reasons to become. And the fact that textile industry is the most labor-intensive industry in the country, provides for labor, is a basically political, it's like it's the best thing for the political party which rules India to generate employment through textiles and apparel, because it's the largest employer generator in the country. It's got the largest employment multiplier also in the country.
Fair enough. That's very helpful. So Sagar, if you could introduce yourself and.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yes.
So, sir, my name is Sagar Parekh. I represent One Up Financial Consultants. It's a family office based out of Bombay, and I don't have any per se sectoral interest, but generally I look at textiles as an investment opportunity here in the fund. So my question is related to what you mentioned in one of the participants' question, where you said that China is trying to deprioritize some textile exports from there. So how will it work? So basically, then they will like shut down factories over there who are exporting garments from China to the rest of the world, or I think that is the only way I see where China can deprioritize, right? Or is there any other way?
A very good question, Sagar, and there are no simple answers. Two things have happened in China. One is many of you may be familiar with the controversy regarding the Xinjiang cotton and the fact that cotton produced in that part of China is ethically under duress because of labor practices, human rights practices, violating many of the international norms. So Chinese cotton has come under big controversy. They also continue to be the largest importers of cotton in the world, despite being a very large producer, maybe amongst the largest in the world. Second issue is that for the last 5 or 6 decades, the Chinese banks had been funding many of the enterprises, earlier state-run, later private-run, in textiles without too much thought on the profitability and return on investments of their money. This has sort of started stopping. So we have also seen a third trend, which is the whole trend of sustainability. And this sustainability trend is irreversible, according to me, and it is going to affect every part of the world, including India. That most global brands would want sustainable footprint in the manufacture of products which they are going to buy from these countries. So China has a very big concern on sustainability. The manufacturing factories, some of them extremely old, not complying with norms, are being shut down. Processing plants in many parts of the country, because of constraints and because of pollution concerns, water contamination, are being closed. So you are seeing a shutdown in the textile value chain in China in many parts of the country, especially the organized sector and the belts, or what we call the hubs, for many of the large Chinese exporting product categories. So yes, you will see shutting down of old, uneconomical, environmentally not so friendly, pollution creating industries in the textile space in China. And this is the way, slowly and surely, their imprint over the textile exports and apparel exports and made-up exports, which was the highest in the world, is going to progressively come down. And this has to be replaced by some country. Right now, it is Vietnam and Bangladesh who seem to be up in the race to get more of the market.
Right. So China's overall exports, I think, was about 10x of India ready-made garments exports, about $160-170 billion, I think. So how much can that, like over next 3 to 4 years, how much with all these issues of sustainability and this Xinjiang cotton, how much can that come down? And I mean, have you already started that process? And going forward 3 to 4 years, what do you think can possibly be the volume that can possibly come to India? And any Indian players who are possibly, in your view, who are up for this challenge in terms of capacity expansion?
So as I've mentioned, I think I've already mentioned, Sagar, that India has the propensity, India has the potential, India has the producers, India has all the capabilities to take advantage of this.
Yes.
And even the government is now trying to support by setting up these 7 parks. But this has been going on for a long time. And like I said, I have, at least over the last 30 years, not seen much success on this. I think it is up to Indian producers. It is up to people with vision, people with a large appetite for growth, looking at a large opportunity space. Textile continues to be a good space. Textile can return good value to shareholders. We have companies in India in spinning which generate close to 18 to 20% EBITDA. We have companies in integrated space which are also generating the similar level of EBITDA. So I think, and you have retail companies between 12 to 15% EBITDA. So I think there are a lot of companies who are earning money, who can see this opportunity. I'm not going to single out any company in this call, but suffice to say that I think there are enough producers who can take advantage of this global opportunity. And I think it is high time somebody really did.
But any sort of number that you can throw that how much the Chinese production can come down over the next 3-4 years?
You know, China, despite the policy pronouncement, China continues to be a very large player. And my understanding is that in the last 3 years, post-COVID, when retailers around the world have taken China Plus policy, the shift in market share has only been 4 to 5 or 6%. And this 6%, I think about 2-3% has gone in favor of Bangladesh, 2-3% has gone in favor of Vietnam, and a little bit has gone in favor of Sri Lanka. Maybe we could have gained 0.5%, but we've not gained much. So to answer your question about what is going to happen over the next decade, very difficult to say. It will all depend upon which country takes up the gauntlet and runs to seize this opportunity. We haven't seen India gaining very significantly in the recent past. I hope that answers your question.
Sure, yes. Thank you so much. I'm done.
Perfect.
We
Thank
have
you so
the
much.
next question in line from Ms. Amrita. Amrita, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. I represent Go Digit General Insurance. So we don't have any interest in the textile sector, but we would like to evaluate this sector for potential investment opportunities. So my question is on the trade agreements that Government of India has signed with countries such as UAE, Australia, and potentially with UK. What do you think would be the impact of these trade agreements on the sector and specifically on any companies, if you'd like to name? Thank you.
So thank you, Amrita. One of the things that is very important for global trade is the free trade agreements, the bilateral trade agreements, some of the sectoral agreements like SAARC, etc. It is very important, and I'm sure, at least I, because of my association through CII and my with Government of India over the last 2 decades, I think the government understands the importance of the FTAs, the PTAs, the bilateral trade agreements, etc. And we have been, just for your knowledge, the largest consumers of textile and apparel singly is USA and Europe, and Japan thrown in. They contribute to more than 60% of the global exports of textiles globally. So it's a very, very large share. So our bilateral trade agreements or the free trade agreements or the preferential trade agreements with countries like USA, Europe, maybe even Asia, become very, very important. And I think the government goes in for these negotiations with a clear mandate of trying to help the industry, especially a labor-intensive one like textile, which depends on exports for a large share of its, for its sectoral size. And India has been traditionally a very large textile exporter. It's only in the recent past that export of textile has taken backstage to software and then to gem and jewelry, etc. But it's still a large player in the export market. I think these bilateral trade agreements, if done properly and then therefore implemented by Indian producers to take advantage, would definitely help in garnering more share in the years to come. However, how well these agreements are negotiated and does it benefit the other country or us will really depend upon our industry and especially the private sector industry. How well it takes advantages of these PTAs and FTAs and RTAs, etc. Okay, so I hope I've answered your question. Secondly, since you are from the digital space, I can tell you there's a lot happening on the digital investments by textile companies, be it spinning, weaving, garmenting, processing. And I'm very sure in the years to come, both artificial intelligence, in terms of a lot of use of digital interface in retail, in manufacturing is going to happen in India in the textile space. So thank you, Abhay.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you so much.
Participants, anyone having any questions? Yes, Dipesh, go ahead.
Hey, hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Dipesh. I'm looking at textile sector at Invesco Mutual Fund. Sir, just on UK FTA again, we are all excited about this FTA thing. But in your opening remarks, you also highlighted earlier that how India lost the China plus one kind of opportunity over the last few years to Bangladesh and Vietnam. So do you think after even if the FTA is signed, will India be able to take share from these countries?
I think, Dipesh, that will really depend upon the ability of the Indian private producers, both in small, medium, and large sector, to take advantage. But I can tell you that these large opportunities will have to be taken by large companies which have the wherewithal to manage 100, 200 million pieces kind of orders. And that is the space where we have not seen too much investments by Indian companies. I think Indian companies have done very well in the made-up space. So you have, very good companies doing made-ups in terms of Welspun, Trident, the Reliance's new investments, which they've made. So I think these people have taken advantage in terms of made-ups, particularly in the area of towels and bed sheets, where India has an intrinsic advantage of cotton. And but we've not seen this very, very much in the large-scale apparel segment, especially for men's, women's, and children. So that's something where we have to have creation of scale capacities, which I am yet to see in this country.
Correct.
I
So
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, correct, sir. So if the FTA is signed tomorrow, right, it will not be a single day event, right? It will take a longer time. You need to have a scale. You need to create a scale, and that's how you will start progressing slowly and slowly, right?
Absolutely, Dipesh. I don't think these capacities take anywhere from 12 months to 24 months to create. Apparel could be much faster. Maybe you could put up a plant in less than a year, a scale plant. But yes, you will see time passing by before we can take great advantage of any opportunity coming from any FTA, unless the capacities are already created.
Understood, sir. So secondly, I just wanted your pick your brains on the PM Mitra scheme, right? So do you think the government is really serious, and what is the progress there? If you can just talk about that, and how it can change the India scale, if you have any thoughts about that.
I'm not very familiar with the scheme, but whatever scheme they brought up for productivity, PLI, now quality, these are all hygiene, I would say. But the productivity-linked scheme, the scheme for, promoting more investments, I believe has not taken off too well. And there are not too many companies in spinning, processing, or garmenting, or technical textile, which are able to take advantage of this massive increase of productivity linked scheme that the government has brought into place. There would be only a handful of companies which will enjoy the advantage of these schemes. According to me, many companies are unable to take these schemes, and in many cases, there are constraints in terms of what equipments are being covered, what manufacturing areas are being covered under these schemes too. But I'm sure it's a step in the right direction. And I'm sure that the government will tinker with the schemes and make it more realistic and more practical for more and more people to take advantage of this in the years to come.
Got it, sir. Thank you very much for your input, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
So Abhishek, are there any more questions?
Sure, sir. Maybe I'll just slip in one. So what are you seeing in terms of, okay, we have a question from Roshan Nair. Yeah, Roshan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So I cover textiles at BNK. So my question is primarily on your views on the inventory liquidation by the global big box retailers, and do you think that it should lead to pickup in apparels and home textile exports?
It's a very good question, Roshan, and I think the world textile industry has been struggling for the last, I would say clearly last 2 years, but very specifically last 6 quarters, because of the squeeze of inventory. The fact that global retailers are saddled with huge amount of inventories, which they're not able to liquidate in time. And as a consequence, the ordering by the big box retailers for fresh orders, for fresh shipments, whether it is spring, summer, autumn, winter collections for the last 2 years has taken a big beating. However, I believe the inventories liquidation is something which has been going on for the last 6 to 7 seasons. We have still not reached a point where global retailers have come back to where they were in terms of ordering. But I personally believe that it's a matter of another quarter or 2 quarters at the most before the ordering comes back to normal. This, of course, is assuming a normal world and not a world hit by recession in the years to come, where there have been many smoke signals, but we really haven't seen, an entrenched recession, though we do see low store-to-store growth in retail. We see less shipments, but I think that's primarily because of the inventory issue that you talked about. And I think hopefully we should be maybe a quarter away from inventory reduction so that normal buying can progress from large big box retailers. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you so much.
We have a next question in line from Mr. Anuj Sharma. Anuj, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is Anuj Sharma from Investments.
Can you speak a little louder? We can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Is it audible now?
Yeah, it's audible now.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
I am from M3 Investment and sector agnostic. See, you touched upon man-made fibers, and since your experience is in the textile field, could you just tell us the long-term trends between man-made and natural fibers? How has it evolved and what do you see going into the future? Thank you.
I would say that, Anuj, the trends that I have witnessed over my 41 years has been a very, very clear and pronounced shift from cotton to man-made fibers. Let's put it this way, that there was a time when cotton would have accounted for 80% of the consumption. Today, cotton probably doesn't account for even more than 25-30% of consumption. So there's been a marked shift over the last 3 decades in terms of shifting away from cotton to moving to man-made fibers. However, the trend of sustainability, which has taken hold of the textile industry in a very big way, will make sure that the future of the textile industry in the coming decades will be governed by only sustainable fibers. And even man-made fibers will have to focus on sustainability of their fibers, sustainability of their practices, sustainability of their industry, and their raw material procurement practices. So I see a distinct trend towards man-made fiber. And you can see that in the sports and leisure goods today, where a lot of specialized polyester products are being used with anti-wicking properties. They're used for sports, they're used for leisure, and they're much better than cotton in terms of performance characteristics. So we are going to see, but it will be more and more specialized fiber and more sustainable man-made fibers, which will rule this way in the coming years. In the viscose industry, you will see that more and more of lyocell-based products, as opposed to normal viscose, will be the order of the day. So people will use whatever they think is the most sustainable products in the coming years. I hope that answers your question. Anuj, you're on mute.
Anuj, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, sorry. I had one follow-up, just an extension to the earlier one. So, you referred to man-made fiber pricing in India being a shadow pricing versus globally. But if I just take the global prices between cotton and man-made, how would they have shifted? And is it, I think you made a reference that it is the comfort which is favoring the man-made, but in terms of pricing, how has it been changing? Thank you. Yeah.
So, Anuj, the pricing of any of these fibers, be it cotton, be it man-made fibers, follows an international trend, which is purely a reflection of demand and supply. So you have seen cotton, averaging anywhere from 75 cents to $1 per pound over time. And there are times when it has steeply gone up, and that is the time when there is a shortage in terms of cotton crop, or there is some policy restriction which reduces the imports of cotton by China, etc. But by and large, you will see the visibility of pricing between this 75 cents to $1 per cent for cotton. Compared to this, polyester, which is the largest man-made fiber, and between polyester fiber and filament, I think accounts for the bulk of man-made fibers really, is completely dependent on the raw material prices of the crude downstream products. So it's basically raw material is DMT, PTA, MEG, etc., and which is linked to the price of crude. And we have seen some volatility in these prices. But again, if I was to put a range, I would say polyester has hovered anywhere from 85 cents to $1.10 over the last almost 10 years. Viscose fiber prices, again, dependent a large amount on the pulp prices, dissolving grade pulp prices, which again are linked to prices of both paper as well as pulp around the world. Has also seen volatility whenever the pulp prices changes or raw material use for viscose changes. And therefore, we have seen the price of viscose varying anywhere from $1.6 to $2.1, $2.2 over time. So this is roughly the kind of range in which viscose, polyester, and cotton, the three primary raw material, has ranged over time. But everything is a matter of demand supply. It follows the normal market-linked normative pricing process. And any blips in this or any major volatility in prices could be caused by any external factors. But right now, the demand is at a subdued level because of the global retailers having cut down their buying for the last almost 6 seasons. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Due to time constraint, we will take one last question. Anyone having any questions? Yeah. We would now like to end this call. We would like to thank Mr. Thomas Burgess for his time and sharing such valuable insights with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone on the call. I trust that the call was useful, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you so much, Burgess.
Participants may now decline your lines.
I beg your pardon?
Participants may now decline their lines.
Do you want me to stay on the call?
No, sir.
No,
okay,
sir. We can,
thank
we
you.
can disconnect.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.